Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, and welcome back to this second part of a conversation on the dynamic convergence. I am your host, just Tracy, and with me I have returning guests, the wonderful David. Hi, how are you, honey bunny?
I am doing just great. I'm here on my favorite podcast.
Oh, you're so kind. Full of shit, but so kind.
How do you
Ah,
know?
then we have the wonderful, the beautiful, I can't even think of words to describe her.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
Freya.
wait, you're talking about her.
Yeah, talk about Freya, not you, Jeff. Just because I know it embarrasses her when I say all these things.
I think
Hey,
if you and
Freya.
Hey. Hi.
And the equally pretty, because we've been looking at his face, Jeff, Mr. Happy himself.
Hello, everyone. Pleasure to be back. And this is my favorite podcast because it's the one I've been on.
Yay! I'm so happy I popped your cherry the last time. Right.
us just are happy, so
There.
Yeah. Got to live up to the standard.
You gotta do these things, you know. Take it for the team, honey. Take it for the team. So last time we were talking about our villains from the DC universe. So this time we're going to jump straight into some Marvel villains. And I think Marvel villains for me have a little bit more um, fun to them. They're a little bit more quirky than, our more darkened friends on the DC side. So instead of me starting off, I'm going to let you guys jump straight in. So,
Should say
Jeff,
Freya. Oh, me.
oh,
Okay, yes.
I'm letting you go
Yeah.
first, honey.
All right. Uh, as far as favorite villains in Marvel, I always come back to two. Now, there's a whole plethora of them that I really like, but I've always dug Doctor Doom and Thanos.
Mm-hmm.
And Doctor Doom, he's like we discussed the last time. He's one of these guys who thinks like, well, I'm just right. I just got to get everybody else to recognize it. But until then, I'm still going to conquer the world. Because like you guys are messing up everything, I'm going to fix it all. I'm Doctor Doom. I'm smarter than all of y'all.
Yeah.
And I really like the Secret War that they did a little while back, where Doom essentially became the god of the universe. I mean, like he saved what was left of creation, and that was a really neat peek into Doom, especially at the very end where he had to admit that Reed Richards would have done it better.
Yes.
And this is a guy with so much ego, he never admits anything like that. And that was like a real watershed moment for him that he actually became a hero for a little while. And I was like, man, that was amazing.
Yeah, I would agree with you there because it is especially for him to admit that somebody else is better. Doctor Doom is just this egocentric, full-on asswipe. I think I'd say he
He
was
is.
fed up a
He
lot.
is. He's so great that way, but he's also surprisingly noble. He has his own code of conduct, and if you understand it, you can at times work with him or work around him.
Mm.
One of my favorite Doctor Doom stories is how he vies to become the Sorcerer Supreme, um, and he's up in contention for the next one. He doesn't, but then Doctor Strange ends up training him, and he manipulates all the events in that graphic novel just so he can go to hell and rescue his mother's soul from Mephisto. After all these years, that's been such a long plot point in the comics. In the '80s,
Yeah.
he finally did that, and I was like just blown away by that story. That he
And
was
again, it's
he
the
was
it's the
willing to
human condition.
sacrifice. Yeah, he was the ultimate sacrifice. He was willing to sacrifice his mother's love because that's what freed her from Mephisto's hell. And I
Mm.
was like, man,
Yeah, that's some deep shit right there.
yeah. And that's what makes for a great villain. Like you said, he's a fun villain, but he's also like really deep, and you can, like we were talking about with Harley Quinn last time, you can empathize with him on some level.
Hmm. Definitely, definitely. You can understand why he'd make certain choices.
definitely.
Right. Well, Dave, what's about you? Who are your favorite Marvel bad guys? or girls,
Well,
because there seems to be plenty of them in Marvel.
I've got I've got two specific guys in mind,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll mention the first, and we can go back to him if we have time. But we kind of were talking about anti-villains before
Mm-hmm.
in our
Yeah.
last one with DC, and to me, I'm a big X-Men reader. That was
Yeah.
X-Men and then Spider-Man, and so my favorite anti-villain from X-Men is obviously is Magneto.
No.
Yeah.
Uh, and we could definitely come back and talk about him some more if we have time, because I think we've covered a lot about what makes a good anti-villain before. But
I
there's
think
a
we could talk about Magneto in some detail. I think you can go into it. I think people will appreciate it because they know who you're talking about and they
okay.
understand why you're talking about him in that way.
Well, if I could go to this other one and then I'll come back to Magneto, is that okay?
Of course, yeah.
Okay. Well, the other one I have is probably one that's not as well known. The character is well known, but this version is probably not well known. And it was from the Ultimate comics after Ultimatum, and it was their version of Red Skull.
Oh,
And their version of Red Skull in the Ultimate comics was not your typical Red Skull, who is really your black hat wearing bad guy, the Nazi, easy to hate.
mm,
Their version of Red Skull was Steve Rogers' son, who was
yeah.
taken by the government and experimented upon, and there was something because they used Steve Rogers' DNA, there was always something a little bit wrong in him, and he's plotted for his entire life from the time he was a child, and then slaughtered an entire military base, got out and cut his face off, and then made it his whole life's mission to destroy his father and his father's works as Captain America, so to undermine Captain America. And just, touching on a little bit in our Lost Pad, this idea of mental illness and this pathos that he had, and how insidious, but he's driven with a purpose, and got there because of abuse. He was abused by the government. He had no father figure, no mother figure, no parents, and experimented on. And so he feels he's right and justified in hating the world. And so he's driven by this hate, and his capacity for evil is really, really something that just leaps off the pages for you, and it's very disturbing. I don't know if anybody else has ever read that before.
I haven't, but boy, that sounds brutal.
I haven't. I've heard about the son of Captain America, and I was like, I didn't really know a lot about it, but that is a really interesting person to become the Red Skull. Like, that's just, that's taken it next level.
Yeah, it was really dark, and the things, and when you first the Avengers, or they call it the Ultimates in that universe, when they first encounter him, it is Hawkeye and Captain America encounter him, and Captain America comes to find out that Fury and Hawkeye knew about him.
Oh.
Captain America all that time. And so Steve leaves to try and redeem his son, and the Ultimates take off to try and get Steve because Steve goes rogue. And I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but things go south from there. So it gets worse. So it was really, really intense and just such really brilliant. And I was really sad to see, because I think the Ultimate Universe gets a lot of shtick from a lot of comic book readers. I think there was some really good stuff in there, especially the Ultimate series, even after Ultimate. And I think that particular story was really good. I'd love to see that come back in Marvel Comics. That take, if it wasn't Red Skull, then a character similar, and just call it something else. So
yeah,
it was so good. But to go back to Magneto, which I touched on a little bit just a few minutes ago, Magneto is this guy who, to me, is very hard to root against, especially when he's not being a jerk. So because he's got a point. Mutants in the world, in the Marvel Universe, are so set upon, and really, I think he really does have the best intentions to help the mutants. And unfortunately, though, Magneto is also very full of himself, and he has a tendency towards being authoritarian or a fascist, And so that's what kind of makes him a villain. But when he gets past his worst instincts, that's what he transcends being a villain, and he's even joined the X-Men at a time and everything, and he can do some truly wonderful and good things, and he does have a moral compass to a certain extent. And so I think he's a really complex character. I think he really cares about mutant kind. You can see that in how much he cares for, in every incarnation of Magneto that I've read. He cares for his fellow mutants and wants to help them, and truly grieves when one of them suffers, even to the point where he's had the ability to be able to destroy those who oppose him that are mutants, and he won't do it. And you really see that duality between him and Charles Xavier. They're polar opposites, but really have the same goals a lot of the time. And I think he's a really great character.
I would agree completely. I think Magneto is one of my favorite Marvel villains because he's neither good nor bad in certain aspects of who he is, and then he's both good and bad in others. He has the purest intentions for his people.
Mm-hmm.
And like every leader, in no matter what it is, whether it's a leader of a specific sexual orientation, as a leader of a specific race, a specific creed, a specific group, whether you're a Girl Guide or a Scout, the people in charge are the ones who want the best for you.
Sure.
What I find fascinating about Magneto is here's a guy who survived the Holocaust. He's seen the worst that we can be. He's seen people being genocided for being of a particular genetic mix.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's willing to do the same thing. He fails to recognize it. He has in later times, but especially when he's first going on, the parallels between him and him potentially becoming another Hitler were very evident. He comes right out and says, we're homo superior, we're going to supplant you. And it's like, well, isn't that what the Nazis were just saying like 40 years ago, man? He kind of missed the boat on what you're doing there. It's like he didn't appreciate his own effect on things. He was so into wanting to save his people no matter what the cost that he was willing to become, the
when
next
he despised, but he became what he despised the most. Like most people who have survived horrendous experiences and turn to the dark side, if that's what you want to call it, they end up becoming the things that they thought they were fighting against.
It's because he dehumanized those that weren't mutants, or he kept them as humans. So it's kind of like we talked about in the last pod. Once you get to that point where you can look at somebody else or some other group and not view them and empathize with them as human beings anymore, it becomes much easier to justify whatever it is that you're trying to do to them. So
and he learned from the best at a young age.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the poor guy was experimented on himself so badly that it left the forever implant in his mind. Freya.
I'm sorry.
Sorry, I was just going to ask you, what are your thoughts on Magneto?
I was actually going to bring him up, but I'm happy you guys already did, so I can bring someone else up. Love him. He is actually, besides Rogue and Gambit, because let's be honest, I'm a sucker for them. But
who isn't?
He's actually the reason why, and one of the reasons why I still love the X-Men. He's one of those villains that you kind of empathize with. Like you understand his viewpoint. You know where he's come from. I mean, Charles Xavier is still his best friend. I mean, he's like, I don't know. He is the person that you love to hate, but you don't actually really hate him. If that makes any sense. Like, he's a villain, but at the same time, you're like, but I just want to, spend time with this guy because kind of like you said, he just wants the best for his particular people, but what was that saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
And it's the same with Magneto. Like, he saves Charles all the time, and he can kill the X-Men if he really wanted to, but he doesn't. And he's kind of that I always more thought of him as like an anti-hero than an actual villain, oddly enough, because he does help Charles from time to time and vice versa, but once he gets his own little comment, he doesn't care about the humans anymore. Like
Yeah.
we're chill, we're up on our own little comet, leave us alone, we'll leave you alone. Sort of thing. Which is what kind of made him different than Hitler, because Hitler was going out of his way to, conquer other
Yeah.
people,
Mhm.
to kill them off. And Magneto just wanted a place to be left alone for the most part. And when he finally got it, he was like, all right, you leave, like I said, leave us alone, we'll leave you alone, type of a thing. But yeah, I absolutely adore Magneto, and I will continue to adore him unless they completely destroy his character. But I don't see that happening. So.
I agree. I think you would have some really interesting conversations if you sat down with Magneto.
Yeah, I would.
You know what I mean?
I was a lot of theoretical and
And let's be
conversation.
honest, Charles Xavier is not the hero of the X-Men.
No, he's done some pretty shady
He's
stuff.
done some really shitty things, you know what I mean?
He planned on how to kill all of his X-Men. He's not the nice old man that you think he is.
Nah, you know what I mean? He blocked away fucking Dark Phoenix, and poor Jean Grey went ballistically mad. You know, his own son with his own mental health problems is ignored.
And how does Charles always justify it? He always says, "Oh, well, I was doing it for the greater good."
Greater good.
The greater good.
Yeah. I think Charles sometimes is more of a villain than Magneto. That's just my opinion. I know I'm going to get a lot of grief for that.
Let's not forget all the times that sometimes, like when, the first time Charles got his legs back under him, what does he do? He flies off into space. Is like, you know what? Screw this responsibility stuff. I'm going to go hang out with my old lady in the Shi'ar Empire.
Yeah.
So sometimes he just abdicates his responsibility. He's like, I know I set all this in motion, but hey, Scott, you're the man now. See you later.
Yeah, poor Scott.
So he's not always the best character to be leading you.
No. And he does use an awful lot of emotional manipulation.
Yeah.
As a way to justify his decisions. I left you in charge because I believed that you were ready for this. That was my fault. Things.
He's doing that whole disapproving father thing.
It gets under my skin sometimes. So I would be roar. So Freya, besides Magneto, who else in the Marvel bad guy, bad girl universe do you like?
All right. So
she's got something.
So I was gonna stick to X-Men, but I decided to not. I'm gonna venture into Spider-Man's territory. I'm gonna go with okay. So I had to kind of work my way up because I wanted to mention a lot of them. Okay. So I'm just gonna mention them as a whole. I'm gonna talk about the symbiote. Symbiote.
Oh yes, correct.
Yeah. I think he's Noel. I can't pronounce his name. Noel, the creator. That dude's an actual demon, shadow demon. Mm-hmm. How more evil can you get? And the whole symbiote thing, like there were some that became good, which I understand. Yes, there are good symbiotes too. Yada. But the vast majority of them are evil. They tried to take over Earth. They have my favorite villains, which are Venom and Carnage.
They're my two favorite Spider-Man. Yeah.
Oh, I love them so much. And then there's others, but just the fact that it's an entire species that was created by a demon, it's just I don't know. And that they can multiply because they're parasitic, beings, and they have different powers, and it's this huge. I love them. It's one thing to have one specific person, but when you have an entire race that is completely different depending on who they're absorbed into, it's amazing. And having them get eaten is kind of that was stupid, Marvel. But I love them. I want them.
Hey,
back.
Marvel, that was stupid.
Stupid.
They're making a comeback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So It's just, I love them. I love just the vast number of differences and how creative you can get with them, and how much of a pain in the ass they are for everybody. Because what can you do with Parasite? It's
Sweet FA.
come on, gives you superpowers and all this other crap. It's fantastic. So those guys, and then also I kind of like, and I know I'm probably going to get crap about this because I always say that women are evil. So I'm going to throw out a female, okay?
The two that I was going to talk about are both female, so.
Yeah. I was going to throw out the Enchantress.
Oh, yes.
Actually talking about Marvel's Enchantress.
Yeah.
Who's an Asgardian? That girl. I love her and hate her at the same time because she's like the stereotypical like evil woman.
Yeah.
No, like
she's the 1970s version of who sang that song? Evil woman. That's exactly what she is.
Yeah,
she's the ultimate entitled bitch.
Yeah.
Yeah, she really is. And like she controls men by kissing them for a week. They become her slave for a week. I mean,
yeah.
How easy would life be? Her powers are no joke, though. Like, she has so many powers. It is ridiculous. And I'm not going to take the time to list them off. You guys, there is Google. You can find it. You can read them. I'm talking about the first one, because Loki created the second one, but I'm talking about, like, the original.
Not her little sister, Lorelai.
No,
you got to go with Amora.
Amora, yeah. That girl, I think, she's the one who, like, is obsessed with marrying Thor, and she is just
like all Asgardians. She's super strong, super durable, a little bit of super reflexes, obviously extremely longevity, and she is a top-notch sorceress on top of all that.
Yeah,
total badass.
Always got about her is she's the ultimate like ex-girlfriend who's obsessed with breaking up. Thor. So so she's obsessed with breaking up Thor's relationship and sliding on in there. So.
I mean, she created to get under Thor's skin when she like enslaved the executioner. Got all poor Scourge always following around like a lovesick puppy dog.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah. Come here, slave boy.
It's like, hey,
I need to go get beat up by Thor again.
Yeah. Hold my handbag, bitch.
Exactly.
The thing is, I think with DC, compared to DC, Marvel do have better female baddies. One of my favorite, we'll start with X-Men and then I'll move out of the X-Men universe. Mystique, peoples.
Yeah.
Raven. Oh
Classic.
My lord, this woman knows what she's doing. She can be anybody. She can be anywhere. She is the ultimate killing machine. And I just think she is so underused in the Marvel universe when it comes to the newer aspects of it.
Because Claremont knew how to get the most out of her, but it's like you said, she's really fallen off.
Yeah,
she's such a great villainess.
Because she can do anything, and she's Kurt Wagner's mommy, which makes me kind of sad because I think Kurt Wagner is the best. Nightcrawler is my favorite, lovable X-Man, and I think it's very sad that she's horrible to him, and then he has the mommy issues. But anyway, that's a whole other podcast. But yeah, so for me, with going with the X-Men, it would Mystique, I think, is even up there more so than Magneto, because she has done some serious shit and she jumps from side to side. She is part of the X-Men. She is part of Magneto's force, and she's her own. She's hidden away, and then she's out in front, and she's got so many dynamics to her personality and who she is that she makes for an amazing leading character, and she never really gets that, and that pisses me off.
I mean, I know we're talking about comic books, but I mean, that's part of the reason in the movies why I have such a problem with the current
With Jennifer
incarnation.
Lawrence playing her.
Yeah, because that is not Mystique.
Uh,
If there was a comic book version of Mystique that came close, it was Rebecca Romaine's version,
Robin.
who was
I
badass and strong and powerful and had her own agenda,
yes.
and was going to hold to her own agenda. She didn't take crap from the X-Men. She didn't take crap from Magneto. She had what she wanted to do. This current version in the movies right now is just so blonde, well, blonde too, but bland and
Yeah.
just boring. And it's like, I was sitting there going, it's like, Jesus, lady, grow a spine and be Mystique, for God's sake, and just kick people's ass and go
Actually
off.
kick some ass, yeah.
It's like,
Yep, definitely. I do not as an actress, Jennifer Lawrence is amazing. As Mystique, not so much, because they have written the worst Mystique in history as these movies have progressed, and that's sad.
Yeah, can't really lay that at Jennifer's feet. It's the
Yeah,
script.
that's not her fault.
It's Katniss Everdeen plays Mystique. That's what it
Yes,
is.
that's exactly
Yes.
what it is. It's exactly
is.
what it is. I'm just waiting for her to take out a bow and arrow and make a symbol of of number 13 or 12 or 11 or whatever that stupid one was.
And then that kid is gonna come. That kid who followed her around from the whole the Hunger Games movie is gonna come in here, and he's gonna puppy dog her around, and
Yeah.
gonna go off into the sunset and kill Donald Sutherland. So it's like,
Yeah. Sometimes Donald Sutherland deserves to die, though. He's a bad bastard.
yeah.
So coming out. Sorry, go on, Freya.
I was just gonna say the problem I have with that Mystique is Mystique's proud of being who she is. Why is she this one person the entire time? She's not even blue for like any of them.
Yeah.
Right.
Because the actresses hate putting on the makeup.
Well, that's a different actress and not try out for a part that requires you to be a blue person.
Yeah.
Suck it up. That is your job. If you don't,
I agree.
you don't get the job.
I was so disappointed when Jeff Goldblum wasn't blue as the Grandmaster. I was like, come on,
I
man. All you gotta do is put the face up. Just the face up.
I agree. I don't understand why they try and change
Look
things.
at Zoe over there. She's painted green from her torso up.
Yeah.
She's awesome. But yeah, that's my whole thing. And she just seems like a perpetual child through those movies. Like Magneto in the first, like, I can't watch.
Oh, I'm lying in bed. Look at you. I'm gonna seduce you.
She's in a thing with Beast, which isn't. I'm like, this isn't a romance. I don't give a crap about Mystique throwing herself at Magneto because that's not the Mystique I know. For one thing,
just she wouldn't throw herself at anybody.
No.
Yeah, let's get back to talking about real villain.
Yeah.
Not that, because that's not a villain. Move on to my boy Thanos. Now I gotta say,
I still want to talk about one before we jump back into Thanos.
Oh, sure.
I want to talk about Elektra.
Oh yes.
Oh, Elektra.
Another one who straddles that line.
That line and that stupid movie. But God bless you, Jennifer. She tried so hard. But then they made, thank God that for Netflix adaptation of Elektra, because she needs her own bloody Netflix TV show, because that was the real Elektra Nutches. That was just perfect. She is a badass assassin. She takes no shit and she kicks ass. And that's empowerment. That's towing the line between good and bad. I think she likes being bad a bit more, though.
Because that's one of the things that she really got across in the Netflix series that Jennifer Gardner was missing. She enjoyed what she was doing.
Yep.
If you go back to the comics, Elektra, she was really into Matt Murdock is, he's calling her olive oil, but that was their initial attraction. Like that, yeah. She had all these violent skills, and she was really into being that sort of a person, that edgy person. And you don't get that from the Jennifer Gardner, but the Netflix, she felt a lot more like comic book Elektra.
I think because I had read comic book Elektra before I had seen the movie, which was a bit strange because I was just like, what? And she's just so bad. She loves She loves what she was trained to be, a killing machine. You know what I mean? That's what she was trained to do. And she does it, and she does it really well. So why should she be shamed to do it? And that's what Matt Murdock was trying to do. He wanted to change her. He wanted to shame her into being good, and it didn't always work. And
it wasn't going to work. I mean, that's the whole reason she ended up
Yeah.
leaving Stick in the chase.
yes,
Is like she was just way too into it, and it's like, oh, you got to have this sense of piety and purity. He's like, well,
yeah,
screw you
stuff
guys,
that
I'm
shit.
out.
Yeah. So she would be one of my top villains because I just think she's great.
Mm.
And I'll throw one last one out, and then I'll let you go and talk about your boy Thanos. And again, I see. Sorry, go on, Freya.
Sorry, I'm just gonna say before you throw out another one. I was just gonna say I love the fact that she was a part of Shield and Hydra. Can I just throw that out?
Yep. Oh, God.
Bonus
That's all.
points.
That just sums up her personality right there. Shield and Hydra. Yeah. I love
want
her.
to talk about another one who goes back and forth from good and bad, and it's Scarlet Witch. Scarlet Witch has such a checkered past. You know,
I've never really seen her as a villain, even when she was a villain, though, because like the first time she went all villain, it was Magneto had manipulated the situation,
but she still did.
and she still did. But it like when I was reading the West Coast Avengers and when that happened, I was like, man, this feels like I was into it because I love John Byrne's writing, but at the same time, I was like, wow, this feels way out of character. Like, and the thing like that they didn't show, but what she did to poor Simon. I was like, oh, that was horrendous.
And it was something. It is something recent that I started reading again was the West Coast Avengers, and it was because somebody again had made a statement about Scarlet Witch being evil and bad and easily manipulated. And I was like, no, she's not. But then I goes, well, I actually don't really know a lot about her, so I went back and I had a look. And dang, boy, when she wants to go evil, when she wants to go hardcore.
I just had a thought about that. That might actually play in. I don't know, because I'm 50 years old. I've been reading comics for like 42 years.
Mm-hmm.
But remember, she was also a vessel for Chthon back in the day. The primal elder demon that's always trying to invade Earth, the brother of like Gaia.
Yep.
So maybe some of that influence of the Darkhold and Chthon always lingered in her. Maybe that always kind of flavored her for evil, the potential for it.
Well, I think so because look, Quicksilver always preferred the dark side too, So and they are fraternal twins, and they do say Magneto is their father, so she does have the genetic predisposition. Is that the right word?
Yeah, especially because they were born on Wundagore Mountain, which has
and the mystical force. And then their mother ran off and died, and they were by the mystic cow? What's it called?
Bova.
Bova, yeah. And I love that, a mystic cow. It's just the best.
I split apart a little bit is that I've never really forgiven Wanda for the No More Mutants line. And to me, I like Scarlet Witch. I like Wanda. I like the idea. I like a lot of what she does. I don't like what Marvel does with her sometimes. Because to me, she's kind of like what DC is doing with Batman, in that their biggest superpower is they have super plot power,
Yeah, she's another MacGuffin.
Yeah, whatever the plot needs, they put it on her. So, we need to get rid of most of the mutants in the world so we can reboot the book and push Inhumans. Well, no more mutants. It's like, oh, no. But from her character herself and her complexity, and especially her relationship, that complex relationship with her father, Pietro, and then also with Vision, it's really, really incredible. And I'll be honest, I'm kind of with Jeff, where I've never really looked at her as a villain. I've looked at her as, at worst, an anti-hero, because I'm so used to her being in the Avengers. And, sometimes she teams up with her father, but I almost felt like she was doing it a lot of the time out of a sense of responsibility to her brother, who I think is much more villainous than she is. I mean, I think he's just
he's definitely more in the mold of Magneto.
yeah.
Oh yeah, he's his father's son.
Yeah,
But
I mean,
she's like the bipolar Avenger.
yeah. I mean, I think Pietro's a little punk, but that's just me. So.
He's a punk bitch, like.
Yeah.
Needs a good slap, like.
Yeah.
He is quite whingy, I've noticed in what I've been reading. He's quite a bitchy little brat.
Yeah.
It's like, seriously, man, gross it.
It's like, I mean, and even to the point where, going back to Ultimates again, they did some really good stuff. There's a book after Ultimatum called Who Killed the Scarlet Witch? And the whole thing deals with the fact that Pietro can't deal with the fact that she's in love with
Ultron.
With
Vision. The Vision, that's right.
Vision.
And all that. And it's just like, I mean, you're waiting. One of the things I would love to see, I don't know if it's been written, maybe I've missed it, but I want to see Wanda just go off on Pietro and say, go get your own life. Get out of here, you little punk ass bitch. So it's like,
yeah, that would be good to see. Because his relationship with his sister, and it's weird because John Byrne paralleled that somewhat in Alpha Flight, and with another arrogant speedster, I might say, Northstar and his relationship with his sister Aurora. And
yeah.
Northstar is a guy who you go like, this guy could slide over to villain pretty easy if he wanted to.
It's always the way, isn't it? The ones that are just on that cusp.
Mm-hmm.
How about you? What's your thoughts, Freya, on the Scarlet Witch?
I never really got into her, more or less.
That's okay.
She was mostly because I guess I read a bad version. I don't know. Anyway, she had a weird freaking relationship with her brother in the comic that I read, and I was like, I'm not into incest, so.
You're reading the Ultimates then.
That's the Ultimate.
Yeah, boy, they pushed that whole idea.
I'm afraid to turn the page. So
I just kind of stepped away. Like, I like the whiny bitch that is her brother, because sometimes you gotta enjoy a whiny bitch of a character. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, she just never piqued my interest at all. But yeah, besides that, I don't really have any thoughts on her.
Okay. Okay, let's go and talk about Thanos, because that's, everybody's favorite, jewelry loving bad guy.
I will be right back. Everybody, I'm going to mute because I'm going to go Thanos on my dogs if I don't let them out. So
okay. Snap those fingers.
So, like, I've been a fan of Thanos for a long time before the Infinity Gauntlet and all that came about. Mm-hmm. And he was always at first he was a very one-dimensional character. Like, he was a nihilist. Mm-hmm. He's in love with death. He wants to appease death. Wants to court death. But I have to say, it was things like the Infinity Gauntlet where Jim Starlin really expanded on the character, and you started seeing all these different depths and levels to him. Because they reflect that in the movie. They have that great scene where, like, he's kind of achieved his goal, and he goes off to be a farmer. He's like, he's done. Like, oh, I did all this, and I didn't win the day, but I learned something about myself. The universe is okay after all, and I just kind of went off into the sunset. So you find out that he's got more to him, even though he loves death, and they do keep going back to that, like in the most recent Thanos series, where you have Thanos go a billion years into the future to meet his older self as like King Thanos, who rules everything and has destroyed nearly everything. So I guess he's always going to go back to that nihilism ultimately. I do have to say that I like that they didn't take that approach with the movie, because that wouldn't have been. They gave us a villain once again, and we keep coming back to this, that if we can identify or empathize with a villain, at least on some level, that makes them far more interesting. And the movies, they were smart enough to give us a villain with an ideology that we could kind of get behind. It's like, yeah, you're doing this horrible thing, but I kind of understand where you're coming from. And he had that emotional connection with Gamora, which they do at least have in the comics as well. So that's part of what makes Thanos really interesting to me, not just like his vast power and knowledge and stuff, but
the slight vulnerability that he has, that knowing what he feels he is doing.
Yeah, that even a guy who can go toe to toe with Odin for a while, there's still some cracks in the armor. You get past the hard, crusty part, and you can find the gooey nugget center down there.
The gooey nugget center. Yeah, that's what Thanos is. Yeah. I don't think that's what most people would say, but yeah.
I have a plethora of interesting ways of phrasing everything.
What we want.
As my wife chuckles over there beside me. She knows.
Well, that's why she married you.
I have Thanos is he's too big for me a lot of the time. It's just so huge that it's hard to take him in.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Sorry. I just couldn't help myself.
Glad.
If Johnny was here, he'd understand.
And
that was for you, Johnny.
Here all week, folks. Tip your waiter. I'm done. I can't add anything else after that. So, his whole courting of death and everything, I thought was interesting, and honestly, I thought it was more interesting than what they're doing in the movies. For me personally, I kind of like this idea that he was in love with death, and that was what he was hoping to win her by wiping everybody out. And it was just like that really gave a lot more depth and meaning to his title. His unofficial title, the Mad Titan. It was like insane and in love with death. Although I have to be honest with you. Every time I think of Thanos in the comics, I have to wipe away one image, which is Thanos in the Thanos copter. It's just like start laughing.
In the Thanos copter.
Once I get past that, then I can start taking Thanos seriously again. But
I gotta wipe away that and him being defeated by Squirrel Girl.
Yeah. And the whole but at the same time, some of my favorite stuff is Thanos and Deadpool together. So
Oh God, Thanos and Deadpool.
That was a great series.
Yeah, so I love that.
Everything better.
So I do have one other that I'd like to add if we have time.
We always have time.
I don't know if anybody else wants to add anything more to Thanos before I add one person in though. So
I think we've said what we need to say about Thanos and his obsession with jewelry.
I will say there is one more thing about Thanos that I always found fascinating, and it doesn't relate to his villainy. Just you're talking about how big he is, and it relates to his station in the multiverse. The fact that he and Adam Warlock have evolved to a point where they sort of sit outside of continuity, and like going back to the Civil War when Doom becomes like God Doom, he utterly destroys Thanos. And when we get back into the rebooted continuity, the Ultimates go outside of all known space, time, and dimension. And guess who's hanging out there because he's been removed from reality? Oh, Thanos. And
he's just sitting there scratching his ass like.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, like that was some mind-bending stuff. But, even though it hasn't always been written by Jim Starlin just kind of goes there with the character.
Right.
Okay, David, who have you got left for us?
I'm going to go back to the X-Men again, and I'm going to go female this time.
Woohoo!
And there's two of them. One I'm just going to mention because it's going to get me to the other one. The first one is Emma Frost, who I love. But Emma Frost, sorry Emma, I'm not going to dwell on you, gets me right to the one that really gets me, and it goes back to our podcast we did on the DC villains. And it's that power of the mind, and it's Selene, the Black Queen. Queen of the Hellfire Club.
Yeah, she messes with people's fucking heads.
Yeah, and the reason I mentioned Emma is because of the rivalry between the two, the Black Queen, the White Queen.
Yeah, that was always good stuff.
And then when Emma moved over and started a relationship with Scott, and she kind of part-timer, she's in and out with the X-Men, that rivalry deepened even further, but I love Selene because she is deliciously evil,
Mm.
knows it, and revels in it. And it's not evil in the mustache twirling way, I'm going to take over the world. She's just, I'm evil, and I'm going to do whatever my evil desires are, and I'm going to enjoy it,
Yeah.
And
Just
I'm
like
going to,
Loki.
Yes.
Just like Loki.
And I'm going to revel in it in the Hellfire Club, and she's just such a horrible, horrible person, but so interesting to read. And she could pop up anywhere. I expect her to be in an X-Men book, and I know I reviewed a book for Comic Crusaders a while ago, and she popped up in a Captain America book. And she worked so well in that book. And she's manipulating things behind the scenes in that book to further her own agenda just because she wants to see the world burn and crumble, because she revels in misery and pain and taking those experiences from people as a psychic vampire and feeding off them. And she knows who she is. She has no apologies for it. And she's just sinister and evil, and she's really, really a great character.
It's like Apocalypse, because she's thousands of years old. It's like you said, she can pop up anywhere because she's got all that untold history that can come to play in the modern setting at any time.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I agree with you there completely. And she's a bitch.
Yeah.
Like, she is. Like, when you think about her, like, oh yeah, she's a succubus, and that's cool. But she just loves being a bitch. And that's great.
And she gives, to quote one of my female friends, she gives zero fucks,
She gives zero fucks.
Yeah, so she really doesn't care what you think, what the X-Men think, what the Avengers think. If you don't like it, too bad. And if you cross her wrong side, she'll probably feed on you as well. So
yeah, I'd say she would quite happily. Yeah, fuck it. I think she's great.
Yeah,
I do. I think, if you're going to, piss her off, it's like Hella, I think, as well.
right.
I think not the silly movie version, but actually comic version. Like, she just, like, she surpasses Loki in every way, shape, or form. She surpasses most of the other Asgardian bad guys. I just think she is so happy in being a bitch and causing so much trouble and causing so much destruction. And I think,
well, she's the hell after all. So.
Yeah, well, that's what she's named after.
It's that different class of villain that we really haven't hit yet. It's that chaos villain who just, it's like the Joker on DC, but these people that we're talking about here have so much more power, and they're doing evil just because they want to see bad stuff happen.
Yeah. Hell yeah to Hella.
Yeah, she's looking forward to Ragnarok while everybody else is trying to put it off.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Which is why she's always trying to claim warriors like Thor to add to her army. He's like, I don't want you on that side. I want you on my side.
Yeah,
that's
like,
my little hammer-throwing slave boy.
She just needs to have the sorceress on her side.
That's it, right?
To have her go around kissing all the boys like once a week.
Yeah, so come on, guys, let's do this shit.
See, there's a great story idea right there.
We could write the shit out of that.
Marvel, listen, we're here. We're available.
Whenever you need a,
we could call it like Enchantress and Hella frenemies.
Frenemies.
they're plotting together, but they're constantly like backstabbing each other at the same time.
Well, that's exactly what would happen.
But of course.
That's what will make it fun.
There can only be one top bitch.
Unless they fall in love with each other.
Yeah.
Which can happen these days at Marvel.
It happens everywhere, yeah. All right, guys. Is there anybody else you think you want to throw into the gauntlet? Pun intended.
I am tapped out at the moment.
Nobody wants to talk about Ultron.
No.
Ultron was one I was considering, but I put Thanos up above him because
Yeah.
if I was allowed two more, I would go actually Ultron and Doctor Octopus. And
I was
Doctor
thinking Doctor Ock,
Octopus,
yep.
because Doctor Octopus, everybody kind of thinks of like the Green Goblin as being Spider-Man's opposite, but he's not. If you think about Doc Ock is, because he's that nerdy guy who gained power, just like Spider-Man, and he's far more Spider-Man's opposite than the Green Goblin is. Because the Green Goblin's almost like a Tony Stark in a way.
Yeah.
And he never, he's been a major staple villain, but and I'll admit I'm not a big fan of Dan Slott's writing most of the time, but when he did the Superior Spider-Man, that just blew me away. Wow, Doc Ock taking over Spider-Man's life for a long time, and what he did with it just opened up whole new vistas to what Doc Ock was all about.
Yeah.
And that was amazing.
I agree. Doc Ock was the one I was going to throw out there because I just think he's again vastly underrated, and it's just, yeah, everything about him I think is the opposite to Spider-Man. Spider-Man looked up to him in certain ways, in certain connotations when you read different parts, and different people's takes on the story. But he was this extremely brilliant scientist, and now not so much, in the good graces, and that's what sends him crazy. And I think he's just great, and I think he has much better action sequences because of all his tendrils, and that's just me though.
Yeah, it does make for an exciting visual, that's for sure.
And that's sometimes all you want out of your body is like that they look good on a piece of paper. Yeah.
I give honorable mentions to Kingpin.
Oh yes.
Bullseye.
Mm-hmm.
And debating, but probably I would throw him in here. The Chameleon. So.
I'm gonna throw one in,
villain.
but I'm only gonna throw one in because I only know them from a cartoon, and it's MODOK.
Yeah.
The guy that's like
Giant head.
the big giant brain that looks like this, like they same guy from what was Krang from the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Yeah. And I think those kind of came out at the same time. Those cartoons.
If you want to see the best representation of what MODOK could look like in a film, go check out the Full Moon movie, Head of the Family.
Okay. I shall take that under consideration.
And I want to throw a couple out there,
Please.
just because. I want to throw out Mr. Sinister because come on, Sinister.
He lives up to his name.
He does. I mean, he experimented on his dead son.
Yeah.
Can't much. I also want to throw out Galactus, and just because I find him funny looking to me. Well, let's throw out Dark Phoenix too, just for kicks and giggles. But Mysterio, that dude looks like.
Thank you. I love the fishbowl head, dude. I love Mysterio, but like he so rarely gets taken seriously. Because I remember, like I got those little mini trades you used to get as a kid. They don't really do them anymore.
Yeah.
They do them a little bit, I guess, the Kids Adventure kind of things. But I read all those early, like the first appearance of Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four on these little, like, half-size, almost ashcan-size comic books. And I read the first appearance of Mysterio, and I was like, this guy is awesome.
Yeah.
And I wish they had kept the mystery going for a much longer time. Because once you know his shtick, he kind of loses a lot of his mojo.
Yeah.
But as a character, that concept that he's got all this trickery in play, and he manipulates you as well as developing like some really crazy armament. I was like, man, this guy is really, really cool, and he deserves better.
Yeah.
Oh, and that reminds me of somebody else who is one of the most awesome villains who is constantly kind of getting dumped on a lot in the past, 5 to 10 years. Taskmaster.
Oh God, the
yeah.
This is a guy who
Taskmaster.
can take on like more than half of the Avengers and come out on top.
He's got awesome.
And nowadays, people just use him to show like, hey, if you want to show how badass your hero is, have him just run up and easily beat up Taskmaster.
One public service announcement. For everyone who's seen the Iron Man 3 movie, please, 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 go read The Real Manchurian in the comic books, please.
Yes.
And understand who he's really supposed to be. I don't think he's quite the villain that all
not
the other
Manchurian,
ones.
Mandarin.
Yeah, Mandarin. I'm sorry. You're right.
Manchurian.
Manchurian. But good Lord, what's wrong with me? I guess I need to take more drugs or something.
I think we're coming to that time of the evening, aren't we?
The Mandarin, yes. The Mandarin. Very good. And then you can also find Fin Fang Foom, so.
Oh my God, this big fat film. And you know who else is really funny? And it's just because, again, looking, it's very funny. You know, what's the square head guy? Hammerhead.
Yeah. Hammerhead's
Like,
cool.
Yeah, you big square-headed
Come on,
douche.
we all know that guy belongs in a Dick Tracy comic.
Oh my God, yes. But you know, it's fun to know.
Officer with a steel
What
square
about
head. Like,
Ox, Fancy Dan, and
oh man, the Enforcers.
Yeah.
We're talking about old school.
I was about to say, guys, we are going for it, right? We are digging deep right now.
Oh no.
Oh, okay. Well, look, guys, I want to thank you so much for all your information and all your thoughts on our Marvel bad guys. Thank you so much for being with us. And once again, I will say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Thanks, everybody.
Was a pleasure.
Ciao.
Bye.